Assalamu alaikum, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're sitting in the world. Welcome to MacFest 2021 event. I'm Kesra Shiraz, the Executive Director of MacFest, and I'm delighted to welcome our wonderful international guest speakers joining us, wait for it, New York, Heidelberg, Dhaka, Islamabad, Aligarh in India, Jakarta in Indonesia, and of course, good old Manchester. We are thrilled to host this special panel on the topic of academia, creativity, and life during the pandemic, as experienced by teachers, lecturers, and students in universities and colleges from around the world. We are equally delighted to host Kate Green as a Member of Parliament as our chief guest speaker today. So thank you so much, Kate, for joining us. And a very warm welcome to all of you, as well as our host, our moderator today for this special event, Dr. Karen Vogt. I will say a few words about Dr. Karen. Karen Vogt is a professor for teaching as a foreign language at the University of Education, Heidelberg in Germany. Her research interests include intercultural learning, teaching practicums abroad, vocationally oriented language learning, classroom-based language assessment, the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages and Media, and tele-collaboration in the foreign language classroom. I'm also very glad to add that Karen is a dear friend of mine. She has hosted me several times for my literary tours in Germany. So thank you so much, Karen. Over to you. And thank you for hosting this event for us and for all the preparation over many few weeks. And I know you're very, very busy. And again, thank you. I will thank you at the end, all our guests, but thank you for all of you again for joining us from your country of origin. Over to you, Karen.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kesra. A warm welcome to today's session, Academic and Pandemic. We're delighted to have so many interesting people from all over the world on our panel, and we're also delighted to have so many interested people to join us. Did you know that the time zones of our panelists span 12 hours? They do. Yeah, it's morning in New York, and it's evening in Indonesia, for example, from Bangladesh to the US, from Indonesia to the UK, from India to Germany. Academics from all over the world will share with you how they've coped with the challenges that were imposed on them due to the pandemic. But before we introduce them all, I would like to introduce our special guest for today, Kate Green. Kate Green was elected MP for Stratford and Urmston in May 2010. She was re-elected in 2015, 17 and 19, and she joined Starmer's shadow cabinet as a shadow Secretary of State for Education in June 2020. Now she's in the right place, I'd say. Prior to her election, she was Chief Executive of the Child Poverty Action Group. Before that, Director of the National Council for One-Parent Families. That's now called Gingerbread. And she's a long-standing advocate for families and children, campaigner against poverty and inequality, and a former chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Poverty. And she served as a member of the London Child Poverty Commission and the Greater Manchester Poverty Commission. And she was also previously a member of the National Employment Panel that advised ministers on labour market policies. Kate was the chair of the Fabian Society from 2016 to 2018 and remains a member of its executive committee. And she has served as a magistrate as well for 16 years. And she also takes a particular interest in the experience of women in the penal system and how best to rehabilitate them to prevent reoffending. So we are very, very honored that you can be with us today. Thank you so much. And thanks go to the panelists for today, which I will introduce one by one, and they will add more details. But first, it's over to you, Kate.
Well, thank you ever so much. It's a real honor to join this international festival event with colleagues and friends from around the world. I think this is a very special thing for us here in Manchester to be hosting. And I wanted just to say a few things before you get into the really important discussions which will be led by the panelists. On behalf of the importance of education in my role as Shadow Secretary of State for Education in this country. I think we've been very clearly able to see during the pandemic the importance of our education systems, and particularly our university sector, and the continuing importance that they will have as we begin to think about the recovery from the pandemic in our respective countries. Because we know that universities have been the engines of imagination, of creativity, of envisaging a different kind of future, of research and development. And I think in the pandemic, of course, that was really powerfully visible to people, including in the way in which the research community has offered us the hope of a way out of the pandemic with the initiatives in many different countries and universities around the world in developing a vaccine or range of vaccines to address the terrible pandemic and virus that we've been struggling with. But I do think we will have to look at the future with a fresh perspective. I don't think we can just go back to the way we were doing things pre-pandemic, because it's very clear that we got into this situation in part because of failed ideologies and an inability and an unwillingness to address the things that were actually important and really mattered. And so whether it's the fact of the global climate crisis, the issue of population change and population migration, poverty and inequality, all of those phenomena have exacerbated the damage and harm that we have experienced, our different countries and communities have experienced during the pandemic. And so the ability of academia to help us think differently about those and other global challenges, I think, will be crucial to a better recovery than when we went into the pandemic. And for that, there will be certain things that will be especially important in the universities sector. Very important that we honour and respect academic freedom, but also that we facilitate open and respectful debate, that we ensure that the necessary resources to sustain our higher education sectors are put in place, and crucially too, that we widen, not narrow participation for any young person who wants to and could benefit from a university education. It's not just in their interests, it's in the interests of all of our countries, all of our planet, that they have the chance to have that top quality education. Now, I have to say in this country, we have sadly at the moment a government with rather different ambitions. A government that seems intent on using the higher education sector as a vehicle for its culture war, an attempt to narrow the sector, to create a more elitist approach, I would say, to higher education. And I think that's the wrong ambition, and we should have a broader and much more powerful and proud ambition for our higher education sector, because I think we all know that our universities are the jewel in our country's crowns, whatever country we're from, facilitating fresh thinking, fresh ideas, fresh debate, and new ways of looking at the problems and challenges that we face and which have been so cruelly and clearly exposed to us during the pandemic. So I'm looking forward to hearing what the respected academics on the panel today will have to say. I'm sorry, Karen, as you know, I will have to leave the event before it's concluded, but I know we've got some real experts here to share their thinking with us this afternoon, and I'm very, very much looking forward to hearing what they have to say, and thank you for inviting me to participate.
Yes, thank you so much, and we know that you're super busy, so that's okay. As long as you can join us, that's fine. We're very honored, as I said, that you can be with us today. Well, I'm going to introduce the panelists one by one, and they will add more details. And I would like to start with Mr. Kidwai, who's Professor of English and Director of the UGC Human Resource Development Center and Aligarh Muslim University in India. And he's got to his credit 2 PhDs in English with literary Orientalism as his field of special interest. And some of his latest publications are Images of the Prophet Muhammad in English Literature, and that was published in New York, Pentelang, and Muslim Women, What Everyone Needs to Know, co-edited with Dr. Gupta, sorry, maybe I mispronounced this, and that was published in New Delhi. Would you like to add some more details?
Thank you very much, Professor Karen, for having introduced me, and thanks a lot to Sister Kaisra Shiraz for giving me this wonderful opportunity to be on this panel on the creativity and academic activities in the pandemic times. Let me just make one clarification. This my designation, Director, UGC Human Resource Development Center. It is exactly what in the British higher education system is staff development. That is faculty development program. So my main job is to organize faculty development, professional development programs. Naturally, the pandemic has posed many challenges. At the same time, it has provided us with wonderful opportunities also. So while responding to the questions, I will elaborate on those points. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Next on my list is Ivan Bung Kelinci, or Ivan Sustulyawan. He is lecturer of English of Secular Tinggi Bahasa Asing LIA and Universitas Pertamina in Jakarta, in Indonesia. And he is a writer and a translator. And as well, not just a scholar, he's just also a writer and translator. And as such, he has published short stories and articles in Indonesian in English. And he's written 2 books and a collection of social parodies and a novel with action genre. Creative writing is one of the subjects that he teaches, and he helps developing students' skills in writing short stories and screenplays. And with his students, Ivan is often involved in live theater and music performances. He now starts to write his 3rd book, as well as teach international students from Tajikistan in the university preparation program. And during the pandemic, Ivan has been involved in community service programs, namely free webinars that aim to give Indonesian youngsters free training on language knowledge and skills. Is there anything that you would like to add, Ivan?
No, thank you. I think that's enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Next on my list is Zaheer Ibrahim, Chair of Modern Arabic Studies at the University of Manchester. And she specializes, among other things, in women and gender and post-colonial literature of the Middle East and North Africa, with a special focus on the Maghreb and Saudi Arabia. She served as a judge of the International Prize for Arabic Fiction in 2013 and the Saif Banipal Prize for Arabic Literary Translation in 2016. Pardon my mispronunciations. She served as a co-director of the Center for the Advanced Study of the Arab World from 2013 to 2016, and is a member of Subpanel 27, and is currently a member of Subpanel 25. She's also a member of the British Academy project Imagining the Future, engaging young people on environmental challenges to create new and sustainable livelihoods in Algeria. That's a project that is ongoing until 2022, and her recent publications include Tales of Springs and Revolutions, Women, the Algerian Black Decade and the Islamist Femicide in 2017, Occidentalism, Literary Representations of the Maghrebi Experience of the East-West Encounter, that was published in 2019, and Sexuality and the Politics of the Body in Zainab Hivni's Features, in a very recent one in 2020. Would you like to add something, Zaheer?
Thank you very much, Karen, for this generous introduction. Just to say thank you very much for including me in this project. I'm really honored to be amongst you. That's all.
Thank you. And we've got Mashrur Shahid Hossain. He's a professor of English at Jahangirnagar. Sorry, you need to tell. Sorry. At Jahangirnagar University in Dhaka in Bangladesh, and he teaches, researches, publishes, and presents papers, of course, on a host of areas ranging from comparative literature and post-colonialism to critical pedagogy, culture studies, and gender and queer studies. And he's been working on a project on Trans Speaks and 2 book-length projects. On the one hand, rewriting his dissertation on violence against men in film and literature, quite an interesting topic. And on the other, formulating a framework of teaching Anglophone literatures of the British and Celtic Isles in Bangladesh. And currently he's hosting a weekly series of webinars and convened the first online literary festival in Bangladesh, English Jubilee Literary Festival 2021, organized by the Department of English at Jahangirnagar University. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Karin, for this generous introduction. And I think it said it all, apart from the university I'm from. It is Jahangirnagar City in Dhaka. Well, it's my pleasure and privilege to be here, invited along with a set of luminaries from around the world by MacFest. I thank Kaisra Shehraz and Munaaza Yaqoob for initiating my participation in this event. And it's really great to have Kate Green among us. Being an academician, I like working on the issues that relate to marginalization of people, as well as individuals' rage, resistance, and resilience to transform suffering into strength. And I also practice a little bit of translation and creative writing, more precisely writing and composing songs. And my inclination is towards trying something new and innovative. So my proclivity for transformation and innovation is something that fits the spirit of MacFest 2021, that in spite of and in the midst of Corona pandemic, decided to carry on and is carrying on. So let's now carry on with this session. Thank you, Karin.
You're welcome, and thank you. And let's go from Bangladesh to, from Dhaka to New York to talk to Tim Tomlinson, who is the author of Requiem for the Tree Fort I Set on Fire. It's a poetry collection, and this is Not Happening to You, short fiction, collection of short fiction. And his chapbook, Yolanda, or A History in Verse, chronicles the impact of the climate change catastrophe, Cyber Typhoon Yolanda on Tacloban and later the Philippines. And recent work appears in About Place Journal, another Chicago magazine, Chill Filter Review, Columbia Journal, The Good Life Review, Passengers Journal, and Text, which is based in Australia. Tim is a co-founder of the New York Writers Workshop, and is a co-author of its craft book, The Portable MFA in Creative Writing, and that's currently in use on 4 continents. So he teaches in NYU's Global Liberal Studies, where he's a clinical professor of writing. Anything to add, Tim? You need to unmute yourself.
Here it is a year into using Zoom, and I still need to be reminded of the most basic functions. I'm honored to be here with these esteemed colleagues, and I want to thank Kaisra for inviting me to participate in MacFest. The only thing I'll add is the work that I do with New York Writers Workshop, which is both local and global. And through the global arm, I met Kaisra perhaps 8 or 10 years ago. I forget where, somewhere in Asia. I met my friend Bung Kelinci also, I think perhaps in Singapore. And it's wonderful to see you guys again. In the lockdown, I've begun teaching courses on Zoom and another function through New York Writers Workshop. One of the courses is called Prose in the Time of Pandemic. And that's had global participation, people from Australia, the Philippines, Singapore, and Europe and the US. And it's been really gratifying to get the news from around the world, from all these different writers, and actually to see some of them publishing, including someone, an American located in Germany. She's been writing about her small town in Germany and navigating some of the things that I think we're all going through with masks and so forth. I'm looking forward to the end of the lockdown. I've been double vaxxed. I'm ready to fly. I'm ready to see people live. And I want to mention that one of the things that we'll be doing with New York Writers Workshop is a conference in January of 2022 in Kathmandu. And our little slogan for that effort is do the do, in 22. I look forward to seeing as many of you guys over there. Thank you very much.
Do the do in 22 in Kathmandu. Yes, we all look forward to this one. And we've got another lovely lady on our list who is Munaaza. Dr. Munaaza Yaqoob is the chair of the Department of English, founder, director of Critical Thinking of the Critical Thinking Forum, and ex-director of the Institute of Professional Development at the International Islamic University in Islamabad. And she is the author of 2 books, Nurturing Creativity in Literature Classrooms, Cognitive Teaching Model for Developing Creative Thinking, and an introduction to Pakistani women writers from 1947 to 2017. She's had numerous research papers published in national and international journals. She's also edited the book Muslim Women Writers of the Subcontinent, and she's also worked as a project director of a CTF grant project titled Consciousness Raising of Pakistani Women on Contemporary Academic and Social Issues, in collaboration with the Department of State at the US Embassy in Islamabad and the Australia Awards Project. That is called, the latter one is called Gender Balance in the Workplace, in collaboration with the University of Queensland in Australia. That was relatively recent, from 2019 to 2020. And currently she is working as a co-project lead on a research project entitled Mentoring Early Career Women Researchers in Pakistan, with Dr. Rachel Carroll at Teesside University of the UK, her second home, as we learned before, in collaboration with Global Women Development Fund. She's also engaged as a member of the advisory board of core experts for the project on countering violent extremism in Pakistani universities. Over to you to add details, Munazza.
Thank you, Karen, so much. This is a very generous introduction. And I also want to thank Esra Shiraz and the other organizers of MacFest for inviting me to join this panel. It's a wonderful opportunity. I just work in 3 areas currently on developing critical thinking. The second is feminism, feminist literary theory, and the third is environmental humanities. And particularly, I focused my research on climate change and its resultant fear, anxiety, grief, and how can we raise the consciousness of people and critical thinking on these issues. With reference to our today's discussion on academic and pandemic, my project with Teesside University, UK, on which I'm working, one thing is relevant to share here, that with the shift to online mode, it gave us opportunity to negotiate and to shift the funds from a face-to-face workshop for mentoring of young women on research and academic issues to online mode. And that gave us an opportunity to convince the funding agencies to provide fund to my university, to my department. And currently, these days, I am very excited because I'm setting up a video conferencing lab in our department, which is the only and exclusively for the women. In our university, there are 2 campuses, separate for male and female. In female campus, where 14,000 to 15,000 women students are there, there was no video conferencing exclusive facility for them. So now this is going to be the first one, which I am setting up in English department, and one of the creative way of looking at pandemic, creating something out of this stress. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much to all the panelists for sharing their biographic information with us and sharing some more details on their current projects and on their future endeavors at this point. And I would like to make you see how you can see how happy we are to have such fascinating and diverse personalities with us who will be able to share their perspectives with us. Dear participants in the audience, please write your questions in the chat or in the question and answers section, and we'll get to them in our question and answer session at the end of this, this session. We will collect your questions and answer them.
Dr. Karen, would you like to add something about yourself? Anything else you want to add? Because I know you do research, textbooks, etc.
Yes, I could maybe add something to one of the the challenges of the pandemic. Of course, we have resorted at my university. We have resorted to online teaching, which has not been easy for the students. But I'll just add my bit later on. As to my person, I've just like Munazza, I'm also involved in professional development of teachers. I am the as a professor. I'm chairing a special department for teacher development at my university. But basically, I'm in teacher training. Yeah, I'll put in my bits and pieces later on. Okay. Yeah, when we started this panel last year, we hoped that we would probably be over by the time we speak. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And so we're seeing rising infection numbers in many parts of the world. Again, including Europe, India, Pakistan, Indonesia, or Bangladesh. So one aspect I would like you to share, the panelists to share, is the challenges or negative aspects that the pandemic has had on academics' lives. Again, the question, if to the audience, if you have questions or any comments, you're welcome to use the chat. And I've seen that many of you have also disclosed where they are participating from. We appreciate that, because this is a global panel, and we would appreciate if you could also say where you're from. And if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat. If you would like to address a specific person on the panel, specific panelist, then please put in the name so that we can direct the question at this specific person. Yeah, so one aspect I would like to share with you now is the challenges or negative aspects that the pandemic has had on academics' lives. And what impact has the pandemic had so far on your academic lives on a practical level, for example, regarding mobility, regarding time management, regarding commuting, regarding networking with colleagues, and so on. And I would like to address this question to Tim.
There we go. Thank you, Karen. Looking at the questions in advance, I'm not sure I understood the idea of the negative impact only. I found quite a few positive impacts. So I'll just go through them from my personal perspective. Without having to commute, and my commute isn't terribly onerous. At worst, it was 45 minutes into Manhattan to teach at the NYU campus, such as that is. And 45 minutes back. So not really bad. And I always had a seat, comfort, space. I always planned to do reading on my commute to New York City, but generally I fell asleep. Sometimes I would sleep past my stop. I would take the express bus. So it had a great level of comfort in comparison to other New York City commutes. But still, it was a lot of time. And the immediate impact of the lockdown for me was the blessing of hours back in my days. And that may have amounted to maybe 6 or 8 hours a week at the most. But it felt like I had a whole new window of opportunity to do my own work as well as all the work I did in school. So from March through October, I got maybe a dozen stories written. Maybe 7 or 8 of them published, over a dozen poems written, probably 10 of those published in the US and abroad. So from that standpoint, I felt like I was just out of the gate running as soon as the lockdown took place. In reference to teaching, I felt like the initial 7 or 8 weeks of the spring semester were really kind of experimental. And I know that while I enjoyed working in the Zoom capacity, some of the students struggled. I actually had one who native Chinese student who moved in with an American family somewhere upstate New York, and little by little had a kind of increasing nervous disorder, which ultimately manifested in her not completing the class, not completing the semester. I actually had a kind of on-screen relationship with her as she slowly lost control of her life. She wound up in a clinic, and then when she got out, contacted me to say that she has just decided not to bother finishing the class, and she was going to be off on a jaunt through the U.S. I think subsequent to that, people got involved with her and got her somewhat back on track, but I'm not sure where she is now. She might be the most extreme case of an adverse reaction. I think in general, there was grumbling among the students that they weren't able to either attend graduation or to see each other. It felt impersonal to work in this environment. But since September, I found it really conducive to good work, to good learning. I think there's a question coming up that will address some of the practices that we may have developed over the course of these months. I have had to adjust some expectations and make some requirements for the exchange, but overall, I found it to be an easy modulation into this new platform. As Kate had mentioned earlier, I think that there are some lessons to take from this period, and I hope we maintain some of what we've developed to compensate for the loss of the classroom space, because I like working from home. I find it really a blessing. That's my take.
Thanks very much. And yeah, mental health is an issue. Maybe mental health is an issue, certainly an issue for the students, maybe also for the lecturers, because the lack of networking, you can't network as well on Zoom as you can in face-to-face environments. I think this really has an impact on projects, particularly when you don't know other researchers yet. I've seen because if you know people, things might go well. If you don't know people yet and you have to get to know each other online only, it's a different story. But I would like to ask on the effects on the practical level, I would like to ask Zaheer next. What is it like for you?
Thank you very much, Karen. Well, yes, it is a mix of opportunities, but also challenges. There have been a lot of challenges. If I start from what really I feel like the area where I feel like I have lost is research for many reasons. So my research has really, especially since the start of this academic year, it has taken a back seat for many reasons. First reason, lack of mobility. Fieldwork cannot be completed, and it was postponed. It has been postponed since March 20 until now. So there has not been an opportunity to visit an archival site where I needed materials to complete a project. So that's suspended. And in fact, the same happened to my postgraduate student who had, for me, I am lucky because I could suspend it and do it at a later time, but she only has 3 years and she has to complete her research this summer. So we had to sit together and rethink the project and rely on textual resources instead of archival research. So the whole PhD had to take a new shape. She feels really frustrated because that's not the research she set on to do. Never mind. Obviously, hopefully she will get her PhD eventually. On the same front, mobility, I am a member of the REF, which is Research Excellence Framework in the UK. First of all, we had to postpone activities, and then we had to reimagine or redo things differently. So now we have had all our meetings online. Of course, this is a good saving in terms of resources. It's also good for the environment because of all the travel that so many members of the REF are not doing. It's good for the environment, but we are missing on the human front, because after a day's work and a day's meeting, we often congregated in a restaurant or a pub and joked and kind of resourced ourselves in order to face the next day. So now it's, I would say, it's running on the dry side. There is no there's no kind of meeting. It's just working and working and working. So let me see, another area where I found it challenging is undergraduate students, and in fact the element of mental health, because students are not seeing each other. I find that a lot of my time is taken addressing their needs. Sometimes they ask me for futile things they asked each other in the classroom or after the class. All of this is coming my way now. So I find myself having so many office hours on Zoom, trying to answer students' questions. So it really kind of reshifted towards the teacher or the lecturer. Let me see, another problem that students are suffering from, and I am as well, it's motivation. So I need to motivate myself to be smiling and happy while I am lecturing on Zoom and tutoring on Zoom. And also I need to stimulate those students, or sometimes they feel like, why am I going to get up? It's just another day. And sometimes they will not even show their faces on Zoom. They will hide behind their screens, etc., etc. So how do you motivate them, especially because universities now are not sending attendance reports? So it's left down to them to come to the lectures and the seminars without us being able to sanction them in any way. So I would say it's a bag of challenges and opportunities. Opportunities because we have learned, I have to say that I have learned so many things, how humanity as a whole can reach out to its endless array of resources to kind of teach in different ways and do research in different, under different circumstances. I think I am amazed how we adapt to new situations. Overnight, I find myself learning the technology and teaching, and also reaching to my depths to be creative, like throwing joke. Where I think my first lecture facing a group of grumpy students, one way to get them to, to break the ice, I started coughing, and I see all of them going back. And I said to them, don't worry, I'm not going to contaminate you. You see, this is the good thing about teaching you, online. If you were in a classroom, you wouldn't sleep tonight. You would think I have passed on whatever I have to you. So, you have to kind of find your creativity in terms of coming up with some humoristic moments to cheer up the students, etc., etc. So yes, I think this is how I see it myself.
Thank you, Zaheer, for sharing such a lot of information with us, and I can only say I feel you when it comes to supervising PhD students from my end. If I just may add my 2 cents here, I'm a teacher trainer and I do classroom research, and PhD students don't have access to classrooms, or access is not very is not exactly facilitated at this point in time. So they can't get the research done that they have planned for, which is sometimes really frustrating. And PhD projects are beginning to become, they are upside down because they have to be totally, completely replanned. Mm-hmm. Another devastating effect that I would like to add from my end, a devastating effect of the pandemic is I'm a teacher of and an academic in the language department, in the English as a foreign language department, and of course we would like our students to go abroad to learn the language, learn about other cultures, and come back as a acquire those personal competences and come back as a more refined teacher and a more refined person, of course. But mobility has gone down to almost zero. I must say, and this is really something that makes my heart, so that really makes my heart ache, because we're trying to get our students out and we try to get the funding for them, and then we have secured the funding, and then this virus struck, and then people couldn't go out and travel anymore. This of course also goes for conferences. All the conferences are canceled these days. We know that, but I think we can cope with this. This is going to resume one day, but the mobility windows for students might close, and this is something that is really a challenge. We can see moderately rising numbers. The good thing about it is that that students are really displaying interest in going, and we look forward to them once it's possible again going out and going there. But in the meantime, it's been bleak on this side. Thank you, Zaheer, for sharing this with us. I would like to ask Dr. Kidwai, how do you teach or research differently these days? We can't hear you. Can you please unmute yourself? No, can't.
Right.
No.
Can you hear me now? Professor Karen, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Of course, I would be supplementing and complementing what has been very cogently put across by Tim and Zaheer. But of course, in the Indian context, as you know, we are an emerging nation, and the government of India, Ministry of Education, put the infrastructure in place as soon as the pandemic broke down. And in terms of this technology-led education, so we very quickly we moved over to this online teaching. And personally, I was very fortunate. I have engaged in postgraduate teaching as a senior teacher. So the students are relatively mature, more punctual and sincere than the undergraduate ones. But of course, we had this infrastructure problems, connectivity. Another problem was some of the underprivileged students did not have even smartphones. So some good Samaritans, especially the Aligarh Muslim University alumni from US and UK, they came to their rescue. They donated hundreds of Kindle books and smartphones to such students. So it has been, we have overcome that initial teaching problem, and we have this mostly interactive teaching sessions, uh, 45 minutes presentation followed by another 15-20 minutes question answer session, and we regularly upload study material. But as others have said, nothing to beat the human touch. You miss so much that eye to eye contact, the sparkle, the glitter in the eyes of your students. You can spot some on the screen, and you can see their faces, but that blood and flesh touch is very crucial to teaching, because their body language, their gestures, they say a lot, which we miss these days. Then we are really concerned about the quality of evaluation. Now we are restricted to only written assignments put in by students, and then ranging from plagiarism to outside help which they get from others. It is difficult, and this guidance or tutorial part, that's also missing. But that's what man is helpless. Technology has been of tremendous help in overcoming the loss. Otherwise, it would have been a disaster, total loss. And because ours is a residential university, Aligarh Muslim University, so 30,000 young boys and girls all the time roaming on the campus, and all of a sudden everything is gone. It is a ghost town, and as teachers, when we go to department, you feel so, it is surrealistic. And we are used to vacation, but that is for a month or so. Now it has been more than a year. And so we have made most of it. And as I said, this online teaching on Google Meet, Google Classroom, and many other platforms are available. And it has been, teaching has been on, but we are concerned especially about technology, medicine. Mercifully, medicine classes offline, they started a month ago, but I teach some courses on English language teaching, how to compensate for the language lab work, whether phonetics, whether it is other issues. So there are some serious problems. And but as I said, uh, man is used to this, overcoming these disasters. So by and large, we have been able to uh, iron out the problems, but some concerns still remain. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Over to Professor Karen, please.
Thank you so much for sharing from your end of the world. And it's certainly a challenge to, as Zaheer also said, to motivate students if you can't keep eye contact, or if they avoid eye contact, or turn off their cameras and hide away if they can. And it's also difficult for the lecturers to keep, well, or to establish a good relationship via Zoom or via video conferencing systems. Of course, it's not the same as having somebody sit close to you and you can keep eye contact and you can see what's wrong. So people look at you with blank faces or enthusiastic faces. That's different. It doesn't happen as much on Zoom or Google Meet or whatever you use. We've been becoming very used to, very knowledgeable about a lot of video conferencing system these days, right? Because if you say let's meet on Zoom, everybody knows, everybody can handle it. So this is maybe one opportunity, one advantage of the pandemic. Yes, you were mentioning, almost all of you were mentioning students and the reaction of students in your statements. And I would like to ask Iwan now, how have your students been affected by the pandemic in your context?
They are feeling, yes, they miss a lot, and they are feeling upset, even demoralized, and particularly they miss the hostel life, this living together, and because the social part, and all the time they've been writing to university authorities, please open the hostels, we want to be back. And there is a genuine demand on their part, because the library, no matter what material you upload, and internet is available everywhere, but still the seminar library, the specialized books, they are almost irreplaceable. So that way, they have been also suffering and feeling some hardship.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kidwai. I would like to ask Ivan now about your context. How have your students fared?
Pardon?
Ivan, you have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Thank you. Ivan, you have to unmute yourself.
Oh yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Karen. Yes, the effects of pandemic COVID-19 to my students and the students in Indonesia in general, I guess lots of students feel that there's too much homework and there are too many assignments from the teachers. There there has been a few cases of students committing suicide, and due to the police investigation, it was because the students felt too much burden from the homework and the assignments. Yeah, and of course, economic difficulties. Even in Jakarta, the most modern city and supposedly the most prosperous people, we often find problems like the student doesn't have the cell phone which is compatible to join Zoom or Google Meet or MS Team, because probably the handphone is outdated, the old version, so it is not compatible with the online learning. And also a case like the parent in the WhatsApp group of the Parents Association reported to the group that sorry, my child couldn't join Zoom because the cell phone is being borrowed by his sibling. So such thing happen even in Jakarta, let alone the areas or the provinces. We have 34 provinces in Indonesia, which is not as prosperous as Jakarta. So economic difficulties, yes, probably because many parents lost their jobs. Even when they don't lost their job, some of them got reduction in their income or in their allowances. They got cut down in some allowances, so they got less than they used to get. And referring to this economic problem, there were also a few cases that we heard students try to steal to get money to buy cell phone to be able to join the online learning, which is sad. Yeah, the government of Indonesia actually has done quite a lot. Yeah, they give internet subsidy to the students from elementary school to the higher education to university students, as well as to teachers and lecturers, free internet quota, and they also give partial tuition fee, especially for college or university students, and for the students who cannot get the internet connection, especially in the remote areas in Indonesia. I believe the government has done like giving televised subjects. So some subjects are being broadcast in Indonesian national TV. That quite helps for the students who cannot get internet access. The complaints of the students on the internet connection happens like what I mentioned above, not only in remote provinces, but also in Jakarta. Sometimes when they join the class, they can temporarily get lost and then go back again and then get lost again. And then they said that they got problem with their Wi-Fi, their internet. And in one of the universities that I teach, it is a corporate university, and the students comes from all over Indonesia, various provinces in Indonesia, and not all of them live in an area which is having good internet connection. Sometimes they also got power failure, and you see that Indonesia got 3 different time zones. Uh, one of the classes that I teach is on Friday. So some students, they ask permission that they cannot join the lecture uh, entirely because they have to go to the Friday prayers, the Muslims. So this is actually rather difficult because we cannot prohibit them to go to the mosque, right? Um, and especially for the students who are taking the engineering major, their main complaints is about subjects that got to do with laboratory practice. Most of the students complain that for the subjects that needs laboratory practice, they are mainly given videos, and then they cannot comprehend the material easily by only looking at the video, by only learning the video. They cannot touch the things that they should be experimenting with, right? It's lab work. But even in the non-engineering subjects, like one of the subjects that I teach is public speaking or presentation in the English language, we cannot optimize. You see that some of the skills of public speaking includes movement, eye contact, hand gestures. That cannot be optimized both for the students and the teachers. Sometimes I see that my students actually try to use their hands, but because their sitting position is much lower from the camera, so I cannot see that the hands moving, and they cannot practice the eye contact to the right, to the left, or to the middle because they only see or stare at the screen of their laptop. So laboratory practice, and then yeah, skills concerning movement, hand gestures, and then they complain. They often complain about in in corporate university, they use the e-learning system for the students' attendance, but they complain that sometimes the system doesn't work well. So they already actually submitted their attendance, but it is recorded absent by the machine. And then when they complain to the academic, yeah, sometimes it is granted, yeah, their attendance is changed from being absent into being present. But sometimes the academic do not want to change the attendance. So technology also gives problem besides privilege. Yeah, and students also complain that sometimes the platform that we are using doesn't work as we expect. For example, they say that when we have already been in slide 7 in our PowerPoint presentation, the students see slide 2. So the screen doesn't move, although the teachers actually already moved to slide 7. Yeah, it happens. It happens in platform like Zoom, Google Meet, or MS Team. Yeah, and yes, as Zahia said before, less motivation. I think that's also due to too much distraction. Yeah, they can, you know, they can simply click the YouTube or video game while waiting for their turn to present, for example. And there is no sense of big brother is watching you, right? There is no lecturer around them, so and they are I think our students are more technology savvy than the lecturers who are from the older generation. So they can trick us in a clever way rather than we trick them. And another thing is that they cannot consult with the lecturers whenever they have problems. I mean, in the offline-based studies, they can simply go to the lecturer's room and ask, sir, I do not understand about the session that you explained in the classroom. And then we lecturers can simply give them or elaborate the explanation that probably not enough in the classroom. Uh, and for example, 5 students got the problem with one topic, then we can simply ask them, okay, 5 of you come to my room. But in online base, I think it is an annoyance, yeah, or disturbance if student send us direct message, yeah, one by one, asking for the same problem, and then it will be a waste of time as well.
Yes.
Another thing is that students cannot mingle or social with friends, and also they complain about that they cannot optimize their activity in the student activity units or the extracurricular activity. For those students who join extracurricular activity or student activity unit like English club or debating club, they can simply use the platforms like Zoom, Google Meet, or other platforms. But what about those who choose basketball,
Mhm.
football, yeah, or any other sports? Dancing club, for example. They cannot do it because the campuses are shut down.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I
Lots
think
of
those
challenges
are
here.
some of the
Yeah.
problems. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us. What I take from your statement is that social aspects are also very important. Mental health issues are important. Student well-being is important, and that's a challenge. Also, the availability of internet connectivity and electronic devices and infrastructure problems come to the front to come to the fore in this connection, and we can see, and students have to suffer from that. One thing that I would not what I was thinking of is that I don't know whether our students are more technology savvy than us. Certainly, they might be there might be competent in issues like entertainment and that kind of thing that they do in their free time. But what I've seen is that in my teaching, in my online teaching, is that and you remember I teach for future teachers, student teachers of English, that many of the tools that I use they don't know yet, but they are they like to take up. So this is a on the one hand it's a challenge for them, but then it's an opportunity for them at the same time. Yeah, what I also take away from what many of you have said was that this personal touch is missing. The social aspect of teaching and also research is missing. You miss seeing your students, and you also miss talking to them in informal situations, like when you set up your computer before a lecture and people come up to ask you things, and you just ask them how they are, and they tell you things, and that doesn't happen in online teaching. It doesn't happen to the same extent. So this personal touch is missing. I would like to ask Munazza now how your students have been affected by the pandemic.
Yeah, I think most panelists have already discussed uh, Bangladesh and India and Pakistan, I think, or even Indonesia. Uh, I think most of the things have been similar to us. Uh, we were shifted to online in March 2020 and exclusively online teaching and learning. And I think our universities were not prepared and they were not ready for that. Because one thing which I particularly felt at that time was that we didn't have infrastructure to shift to this online mode. So it was not only stressful and had a negative impact, and it actually hampered our performance, teachers' performance as well as students' performance and their teaching learning process. That was because this shift was very sudden. We were not prepared for that. We didn't have that proper infrastructure. And then universities didn't have. And then the second thing, which my colleague have already talked, that uh, this because there are different types of university. My universities and most universities in Pakistan, India, and I think in Bangladesh, they are public sector university, different from elite universities, where everything is available. Public sector universities where lower middle class and middle class and the students from far off areas, they also come, and there is a huge number of people there. So universities didn't have infrastructures, and the students from the social spaces from there they come, they didn't have those facilities. Some of them had, but majority didn't have, in the sense that, for example, if there are 4 siblings at home, there might be one device, one laptop, or there might be 2 mobile. And then when you are using these platforms on mobile, there are many functions which are not available, and or they do not function properly. So this actually, and then this whole mode was very new for us because we were not trained. We were trained in this old way of teaching face to face with the human touch and organizing something and leaving a lot of things which will be discussed in the class and later on will be taken. So everything was different now. So we had to learn new technology. We had to learn new modes of doing the work which I was doing for two decades. I had been shift. I, I had suddenly have to shift. So that my stress level increased. I felt very stressful for the first 3 months. Personally, I felt that when we were shifted and we opted for Google Classroom as our platform, and we were asked to, prepare at least 14 weeks material divided into 4 categories like lecture notes, reference material, recorded lecture, and the assignment project or class activity. Literally, I think we needed to work around the clock. I work like that, searching for those apps, searching for those videos, materials, and sometime changing the mode of all this. We did it. On the other hand, when we eventually, after 20, 25 days, presented this to the students, it was hard to train them. So we were not teaching only actually at that time, whatever my subject was or my class courses were. I was training them. Literally, I was training them. And my job increased. My stress was more because I was also in administration. As the chair of the department, I had to train students and I had to take care of the teachers as well. Most teachers who were, elderly teacher, or must say that above 40, uh, they were less willing to shift to this mode, and they were not quite willing to learn the new technology. The new people, they were good, they worked with me. So, but somehow we worked, we tried to work it all, and after a few months, we were able to do the thing smoothly. We had to sacrifice our summer break. Our June is summer break, July. We continued our teaching for the time which we lost actually during March and April when it was lockdown and we were preparing the courses and online platform. We didn't take the classes. We were given time then. And then we had to sacrifice our summer semester, our summer vacations, the students and the teacher. So it was a very long semester in the history of my, job for every other person who was working in the university. And for the student, particularly, it was very hard. People who were, when we talk about socio-economic class positioning of the people who are already at the margin, living in far off areas, in rural areas, particularly our northern areas, which were in Gilgit, Chitral, and other, and then some people in Kashmir, some people in Balochistan, and such other rural places. They didn't have internet. They didn't have internet at all, Wi-Fi. So then they used to, have mobile data provided by the private companies, and that was very expensive. So they couldn't have face-to-face Google Meet class. They could only join by audios, and sometimes they were unable to join by audio even. So then we used to have, on Google Meet stream or chat. And then eventually we had, as teachers, we had to take another responsibility. We made WhatsApp groups of the whole class. So now WhatsApp group with your students on them, if there are 10 students, 20, or in some cases 30 or more than that, it means that all the time you are on the screen teaching them. At the same time, you are messaging them to those who cannot join the class because of internet facility. And then the other who didn't have device or have the device, but that was not proper and it was not working on for that platform. So I think as teacher, my work was not double, but more than double, triple, or it increased. But the same thing was with the students because they were in panic, anxiety. They were just panicking everywhere that what was going in the classroom, how much they have missed. And those who had the device, they didn't know how to use the device. So continuously there was messaging. And that resulted actually in lack of their ability to assimilate the information which were presented there. So whether it was reference material, lecture notes, or even if I am, I avoided recorded lecture. I tried to be face to face so that at least they can talk to me. But I felt that it was very hard for them to assimilate the information. It was very hard for them to follow the screen which is being shared to them. And then if there are 20 people or more than 20 people in the class, internet, you slow down or it disappears, people are coming, going, and they didn't know how to mute the mic, when to mute the mic and when to talk. So it was not only stress for me as teacher and for most teachers, but also for the students. And the other thing which my colleagues talked, I think Kidwai Saab or perhaps a colleague from Indonesia was talking, this isolation which they experienced because lack of the physical presence of the classmates, lack of interaction with the class fellows and the teachers, that actually impacted. And I felt that they also shared with me that their home spaces from where they used to join the classes, with most girls, actually I teach women, they were not conducive, because when they shared with me that when they are at home, you see multiple things happen, and very interesting opportunity for the research as well. If there is one device at home, then the brother or the male member would try to use it first. It doesn't matter that the sister also had the class, she can take it, use it later on. In many cases, there was such a problem that they didn't have their own email. They were using the email of their brother or some other male family member. So I didn't respond to so many emails because I don't know those people. And later on, I came to know that they even didn't have their email. And then if they are at home, everybody takes it for granted. If somebody needs anything, any help in the household, so just leave it and come and help us here. So continuous interruption, they were facing continuous interruption at home. And if the guests are there or some other activity is going on at home or some other siblings are making some fun, so see, there was noise and other. And one girl I remember last semester, she said that I can't find a quiet place in my home where can I sit for 2 hours and I can take my class. So if you see all these situations, the scenario which comes to our mind was that the pandemic experience for the female student was not very productive in that sense. But the good thing is that it all stress was for first 6 months. See, later on, you see things started moving to bit better direction. We learned the ways, they learned the ways, and you see, we negotiated the things and the things moved in a better direction. And I think after 1 year now, in this March, we are again home. University is closed for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. But the things are quite smooth now because we as teachers have learned that how to create some communities on Zoom and other, because we give them time like breakout rooms to discuss with each other, to see each other. My mic is mute, my camera is off, but they are talking. And then with the WhatsApp group and with the Facebook groups, we are interacting with them. Most people have managed the devices, have learned how to share the devices. Universities have tried, at least they have the basic infrastructure now. So these were some of the stressful things, but if you give me a minute, there were some very positive thing with me as along with all this work and stress, because I learned the value of slowing down, more nature walks, more yoga, reflection and all that. And this was a beautiful experience for me. Though I'm fond of traveling, I love traveling. My mobility was restricted, it was stressful. I couldn't work, as Zaheer said, on my research projects because I was so busy with this online. I had to learn a lot of things, but it made me to write some creative writing pieces. And I feel that, oh, I can write like this. So there are something very interesting which happened. We created something good out of this chaos.
Thank you, Munaaza. So
thank you.
Your creativity was unleashed through the pandemic. Yeah. That's great to hear. But what I've also heard, and what I can confirm from my end, is excessive workload levels, both for students and for lecturers. For students who also have children to look after, it's particularly, and also lecturers, of course, it's particularly school closures. It was particularly stressful for those as well, and I can say from my end that I have tried for my teaching to be extremely flexible in terms of teaching hours, because I knew that some of my students had children to look after or had grandparents to look after. And I don't know whether we can discuss this later, whether this is also something related to gender, whether it's women who were more in demand here in terms of coping with the pandemic. But I would like to give the floor to Mashrur now and see how things are or were or are in your context.
Thank you, Karin. As Munazza was saying, things in Pakistan, India, and Indonesia share some similarities with the things in Bangladesh. We understand that the corona pandemic exposed us to a reality, a disturbing reality that we were living with, but were not properly aware of. And everyone has been affected to a certain extent. Now, being an academician, I will focus on the academia. Now, Karin, you asked me about about particularly students, but we know that the pandemic has affected both students and teachers and everything related to education, from parents to administration to office staff. In Bangladesh, it is for more than a year, precisely since 17 March 2020, that most of our educational institutions, particularly government-owned educational institutions, schools, colleges, and universities, have been closed. What it means is that I am in a public university, that is a government-owned university. So we have not been attending on-site in-person classes for more than a year. And it means that teachers and students are not frequenting the campus. So what happened to the lady who would sell homemade food in a cafeteria, or the old man who would sell tea on streets? These families have not been earning for a year, and it's devastating. Now, coming back to the issues of online class and online academic interaction, when the pandemic hit the country and lockdown emerged in March 2020, well, that was lifted after 3 months. So when the pandemic hit the country, we were not prepared for online teaching because of having inefficient infrastructure and inefficient exposure to online interaction. However, due to the recent boom in digital industry and practice in our country, we at the public universities in Bangladesh managed to start online classes in July 2020. Well, we started online classes, but not always and not everywhere with substantial success. So now, broaching the problems encountered by university students, teachers, and administration, I will isolate 6 points, many of which have already been talked about. I will isolate 6 points that have affected our education and our online ventures. The first one is rather common, that is lack of proper internet facilities or connections, particularly in the rural areas. And it became a major challenge as many university students who stay in villages have to leave their dorms and go back home. In my classes, sometimes I found a couple of students trying open fields, going to open fields, only to have proper internet connection for online classes. The second challenge is the lack of gadgets. Some students, some families may not have the type of mobile phones or the laptop required for online class, let alone taking online tests and tutorials. Or a family that Munazza had mentioned, that a family may have one mobile set and there are 3 children who need to attend online classes. So there are discrepancies. Now these students had to struggle a lot. Some are still struggling, and understandably, it has jeopardized equity and the ethics of inclusivity in education. And of course, being isolated may generate dangerous reactions. The third point is also known, that is limited affordability. There are many families that are not able to purchase Androids or laptops. Well, even the megabytes in these GBs, they cost much, and it matters. I know a student, many students, I'm talking about one student whose father had left the family some years back. So mother was the only earning member, and she was teaching at a primary school. But since all schools were closed, and that was a private school, she stopped receiving salary from July 2020. And the student who would also do some jobs, part-time jobs, she has also lost her tuitions. So now what it takes and what it means to have this student at your online class. However, there have been some financial aids from the government, from some universities, from many individuals and companies, and that sometimes, not always, save the grades. The fourth point is limited spatiality, a limited spatial range. There are few students who do not afford a noise-free room, even a free room to attend online class. They are neither able to open their camera, nor they're able to open microphone. And it is also interesting to note how much of a lecture they can actually follow. The fifth point, which is probably exclusive, is a journey without destination. What does it mean actually? In the context of Bangladesh, particularly the context of public universities, I do teach at a public university. When I said that online classes have been on at the public universities, but in most cases, final examinations are not taking place because on-site examination is not possible, and not every student has proper exposure to online interaction so that they can take online exam. And we cannot take risk. So also there are some cases at which teachers are not arranging continuous assessment or tutorial test online. So the cumulative result is students are attending online classes, the syllabuses are getting completed, but there is no or very little space for assessment. Quite understandably, studying for 12 months without proper system of assessment, without any hope of getting promoted to the next year or next semester, or without any hope of starting professional career, it is distressing. This lack or absence of motivation is likely to lead young students to trauma, informed by helplessness, sense of absurdity, mobilizing some people to rage, even suicide attempts. And I have first-hand reports of such trauma. This takes me to my last or sixth point, that is the experience of loss. Unlike other times, experience of loss has become rather common during Corona pandemic. So we are dealing with students who are witnessing deaths in news and around, who became Corona positive themselves, who had to take care of family people suffering from COVID-19, and who had to face the death of father or mother or the very dear grandparents. So to conclude, I can say that Corona pandemic has affected and changed our academic scenario forever. Whether for something worse or better, time will say. For me, being an introvert person practicing literary and cultural studies, this lack of mobility may have affected some of my research works, but yet I'm fine with being stuck at home. But I know that for many students, it is traumatic, materially and mentally as well. A major reason is that they are not seeing and meeting each other. We might be able to compensate for the material problems, but dealing with the students' mental issues may take a toll unless we are innovative enough to translate illness into illumination.
That's very nicely said. Thank you so much, Mashrur, for these closing words on challenges. And I would like to take us a look. I would like us to take a look at the positive side of things now. There's always two sides to the same coin, as you know, and this pandemic is, of course, no different. And you've already mentioned a lot of positive aspects. So what are the opportunities that you have been able to seize? What are the best practices that you have developed in various aspects of academic life? And since time moves fast when you're having fun, I would like you to restrict yourselves a little and ask you for brief statements now, so that we can leave some time for a question and answer session for the audience, for questions from the audience. So I would like to ask Iwan first for his brief statement. What chances related to teaching, to research, other aspects of our academic life have you been able to see in the pandemic?
Yes, thank you, Karen. Yes, as you said that there is always positive side of even catastrophe or tragedy. I see that this pandemic, COVID-19, actually opened our eyes that you know that in Indonesia there has been a complaint over the disparity, a great disparity of the quality of education among the provinces in Indonesia. So that, if I'm not mistaken, last year our Minister of Education and Culture abolished the national exam on the consideration that national exam is not fair for the students in the areas or provinces whose quality of education is much lower than the provinces which got higher quality of education. And since now in COVID era, we mostly use the online-based learning and teaching process, then I think that opens a chance for the students in the remote areas, in the areas which level of education is much lower than those in big cities, for example, to access the education, the qualified education from places which has higher level of quality of education without the necessity of going to the city, without the necessity of moving to the province that they want to study, so that we can have more or less the same level in the future of education for the whole provinces in Indonesia. Another chance is that we lecturers in Indonesia, we've got three obligations, namely teaching, researching, and then doing community service. For the community service, I usually have the thought of going to a certain institution. For example, I several times I go to the office of the media or magazine and I teach to journalists. I give free training on TOEFL, on public speaking, on English, on general English. But then there are only like 5 to 10 students, 5 to 10 journalists as my students. But after the pandemic, I gave free training, free workshops on online basis, and I find out that I can have even more than 100 students, and some of them also come from amazingly overseas countries as well. So that opens a chance for a broader access on to education and training to become something universal, so everybody can get a chance of qualified educations. And the last thing is that in the context of Indonesia, I guess this pandemic also lower the political tension. Since Mr. Joko Widodo was appointed as the governor of Jakarta in 2012, and then later he was appointed as the president of Indonesia in 2014. There has been like two polarized, two conflicting or two opposing groups. Yeah, the one that is for the government and the one who is contra the government. And the tension the tension keeps rising until the pandemic came, and then I see that this pandemic lowered the tension, and now a lot of people focus on helping each other. A lot of mosques open Friday free lunch for the poor, yeah, and a lot of institutions do fundraising to buy poor students cell phones, to give them donations. And we have like the reviving spirit of togetherness, regardless our political orientation. I think that's what happened.
Thank you. So you mentioned community services and unifying political aspects, more sense of community, more charity going on. People remember that this pandemic is a chance as well. You have to stand as one. Thank you. I'd like to ask Dr. Kidwai next. about your...
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Karen, for giving me another opportunity. And I would draw your attention to the two bright spots or positive developments arising out of this pandemic. One is at the national level, the switch over to this technology-led education or the use of educational gadgets, which would have taken years. That transformation, because of this compulsion, it has been effected within a year. Now, not just the teachers, students, their parents, and everyone associated with this academic world is now thoroughly familiar with this technology-led education, computer savvy. So, which would have taken very long and so many incentives. Now it is a matter of survival. In terms of this technology-led education. And the other good thing about it is I just referred to this teachers training program, which we used to organize. Because of these geographical distances and dislocation, at our training center, teachers from only the nearby areas used to join. And because it was a residential course, so they had to take a lot of trouble. They had to take a lot of effort for that. With this online teaching, now we have the mini India at our online programs, because anyone from any part of the country can join. So at social cohesion level, this is a blessing in disguise that people from South, North, South, West, and East India, they can also join. Earlier, our training was limited to only North India because we are located in North India. The center, the training center in East catered to their local teachers. But with this online, this boundary-less and geographical device, we are now able to interact with teachers in all parts of the country. And so that is one another good part. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Unmute yourself. I take that the digitalization process has been moved forward by the pandemic, and it acted as a kind of a catalyst. And you certainly have the potential to reach more people than before, even in remote areas. Thank you so much for giving your thoughts on this. Mashrur, I would like to ask you to give your perspective on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, when we encounter trouble or crisis or challenge, we lament and we do join blame game. And that's rather very common. And it happens. But there is no harm because they may heal. But lament or blame game should not be the only end or the only means. Lament and blame game must be punctuated by, conditioned by, followed by the will and the ability to translate suffering into strength, to translate suffocation into stamina, to translate rage into courage, to translate wound into wonder. This is what I learned and earned from the pandemic, from my two types of academic experience. The first one involves giving and taking online classes, exams, etc. And in Bangladesh, it is a kind of traumatic experience. But we survived, and many of us have been doing it rather successfully. There were many challenges that we talked about, but our students, our teachers, most of our teachers and students managed it their own way, because it involves a kind of agency, a combo of willingness and tactics to overcome hurdles that we might not have been aware of, but learned. For example, it is intriguing to learn when, after the completion of a 60-class course, your student told you that your regular online classes helped them survive, some of them survive suicidal and self-harm tendencies. So wow, classes can cure, lectures can heal. And a major reason was the very innovative ways we modulated our classes. I mean, we were forced to modulate and modify our classes, which includes, for example, transcribing oral lectures into written slides and making YouTube-friendly uploadable short lectures. It includes preparing and using audio and visual aids, including songs and dances. It includes enhancing online one-to-one interaction, in which, because the camera is on, a student can see herself or himself performing. And it involves innovating never before ways of class tests. So, well, problems help you innovate. So while once at the beginning, online challenges left us disoriented, it has now opened up new ways of digitally reaching each other. So I told my students that let's leave these moments in a way so that some 50 years from now, when you will be talking about these days before your grandchildren, you will cry. And not only because you may have lost fellow beings or favorite things, but also because you survived the trauma. Looking from a distance at yourself should be the moment of pride, of reckoning. And that intensity of emotion is likely to leave you crying. Let us live these days in such a way so that later, some 30 years from now, or at the moment of death, we may say that this is my life and myself I made it. And this takes me to the end. I mean, the second part of my talk, discussion that you asked. And second type of academic experience involves doing e-meeting, doing research, joining and arranging webinars. And I must say that we achieved something that we never dreamt of. For example, we convened a seminar committee that has been arranging weekly webinars since October 2020. And it involves lots of speakers from around the world whom we may not have ever met. For example, this session itself, because we went online, so we are able to meet lots of people. And that's also free. And so this is something that somehow this online interaction opened up. And also at our department, recently we arranged a 3-day long online literary festival, the first of its kind in Bangladesh. And the theme of our Lit Fest was the one with which I would like to close my discussion. Reconfiguring the famous opening lines of Charles Dickens's novel, A Tale of Two Cities. We, through our online interaction, intend to translate the worst of times into the best of times. So let us transform us and the corona pandemic itself. Thank you.
Thank you for your inspiring words. Who would have thought 1 year ago that online classes are doing something for social justice, right? And social cohesion, motivational, holistic teaching and assessment. So who would have thought? Tim, I would like to ask you, what are examples of good practice that you can report in terms of teaching?
Thank you. I think we've already heard some of the strategies and the innovations. Mashrur mentioned quite a few that I think are part of my routine now. One is guest speakers. And so this semester I have a course in addiction studies, and I'm having people from outside academia come in and speak to the students online. That's very easy to arrange these days. The sad thing about it is we can't pay them since almost all honoraria are frozen at the moment. The other thing that I've done, and I'm hearing other people say the same, is kind of compartmentalizing the classes and moving from one section to another. So rather than have a full session of revision of workshop on a manuscript, I move through various components of the class, trying to keep things vital and stimulating. Liberal use of the chat room, for instance, is really good for me. I have a very different set of problems, I think, from what I'm hearing, and it's part of the excellence, I think, of the Zoom platform is getting to hear from so many people from so many parts of the world, because you're reminding me that I'm working in a super privileged space. Most of my students do not have the problems that many of you are describing. I would say that there might be 1 to 5%, if that high, who struggle with connectivity. They're overloaded with tech savvy and tech gadgets. They have access to pretty much everything. And it's for that reason that the only other addition I'll make to innovations in the Zoom classroom is that I require everybody to be on screen all the time. And I think, part of that has to do with my own sense of working in a classroom. I want to have interaction with people. And if a student, for instance, drifts off in a live classroom, glazes over or falls asleep, I don't allow that. They have to be participatory. Of course, that the burden is on me to keep them engaged. But I think the same thing is true with the Zoom classrooms. So I don't allow people to go off camera. I want people to be on camera the way you guys are, right? So I'm looking at Zaheer and Mashrur and Karen, full-faced in front of the camera, not like, for instance, this, right, where you see the top of their heads. And I think, from my perspective, when we began going on Zoom in March of 2020, the requirement was to allow students to be however they wanted to be. And I found that really destructive for me and the classroom. So by April, early May, I insisted on everybody coming on camera. And now as part of my requirement, that's made a big difference for me and I think for them. I don't think I would enforce that or even think of doing that, hearing some of the circumstances that you guys are working with. I encourage them to do virtual backgrounds like I do. This way they can cover up the embarrassing situations that they live in, if that's the case. And that can be used innovatively as well. Why do you have certain images behind you? What do they say about you or your location? So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim, for sharing some of your routines. I think camera is on or off something that is also discussed at schools a lot, not just at university, but also at schools. I would like to go on and to ask Munazza now, in terms of examples of good practice, teaching practice that you have taken away from the pandemic.
Yes, first let me appreciate Mashrur for boosting our spirits up, that he spoke so positively. Yes, we definitely created something positive out of all that chaos. But let me say a couple of sentences, but still I'm not very excited because in a country where 60% of the population is in rural areas at periphery, where still infrastructure has not been established, and it may take 5 to 7 years actually to do all that work. Till then, I don't think so that only with a few urban spaces we can achieve all that what technology is promising us. So having said that, there are positive things definitely which we have achieved and we look forward to them. Particularly, I feel that as a teacher, working on some online platforms, Google, Zoom, and then other tools like WhatsApp, WeChat, Facebook chat, and other thing, which we have been using. I think that helped me to organize my teaching in a better way. And then during this pandemic, online resources were available to us and they were free of cost. Many of the libraries and other institutions, they gave us free access to their good materials. And I think with that access, we are able to have we have time to be at home to do our research and to organize our teaching. And the good thing is that if now, after some years or maybe time, if we are moved back to face-to-face teaching, I think that won't be a completely face-to-face teaching. It will be a type of hybrid mode. And it's good. I welcome them because that is a hope, that hybridity. We will not lose the human touch. We will not feel isolated, but at the same time, we will have more tools which we have learned when we resume to face-to-face teaching, we can enhance the quality of our teaching learning situation by that. But I would end on my personal note that though it's been a year, but still I feel that personally, I don't know about many people, but speaking on online platforms like Zoom, as I'm speaking now, I feel that I still need to be comfortable with that. I still can't process my information. When I'm talking and I look at the screen, I lose the connection of my thoughts. So perhaps trained in that way I've been trained that way, but we are learning to cope with that. And I think we have developed creative initiative that have helped us to overcome the limitation of this virtual world. And I think that is a hope for us.
Thank you so
We
much.
keep working in a positive direction.
Thank you. And your structure, your thoughts are totally structured to me, so no problem.
Thank you.
So much, Munazza, and Zaheer is next, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts on this.
Thank you very much indeed. In fact, yes, challenges put aside, I think there are some things I will never go back to personally. For example, I will never go back to paper course books. I will never go back to exam papers because this gives me a good feeling that so many trees are being saved. So never, never again. And it's really, I think this is a big gain because libraries have worked so hard to digitize so many resources. That also saves so many trees. So on the environment, and this is important to me as I support the environment so much, I think this really is a good lesson for us, and we should save on the paper that we waste. I think exams, especially exam periods, the amount of paper that is wasted is phenomenal. The amount of money we spend on course books is atrocious. So this I think I will never go back to. And also because a lot of materials are being digitized, I think we can share more materials with colleagues across the world on the global scale. Let's not forget that monographs are so expensive to buy and some resources cannot be accessed by all. So this is an opportunity to extend the knowledge beyond the frontiers of the places where people can afford books and resources. On the lecturing side, this is my own experience. I think from the beginning, I didn't like to pre-record myself. I felt that was atrocious. I didn't like to give students a recording because that's not fair. So I opted for Zoom lecturing right from the beginning. And I am happy that that's what I did because my students gave me some good unsolicited feedback without asking for feedback. And they said, this is close to face-to-face because most colleagues at my university have opted for pre-recorded lectures. So what I do when I give my live lecture, it's also recorded, and the recording will go up onto the website for students who were unable to attend it or as an extra resource. But pre-recorded lectures is something I will oppose, I continue to oppose. Now, another thing I benefited from a lot is really open the classroom to guest speakers from all over the world. In the past, I used YouTubes, and sometimes these YouTubes were dated or the links were broken. I teach the course on women and gender, and my students are thrilled by having leading activists in the classroom talking to them and exchanging, asking them questions, etc. So this is also an opportunity. From the student side, I will be brief. I know we are running out of time. From the student side, the chat option on Zoom has really helped a lot of the introvert, shy students who would never ask a question in the real world. So now they can type in their question and we can answer that at the end. Or those who would not like to show their faces. At Manchester, we cannot oblige students to show their faces. I find that some students benefit from that. Especially my 9 o'clock lecture. Some students will miss that out because they don't have time to get dressed up, made up, catch the bus and come to the lecture. So there is more attendance, believe it or not. And this surprised me how on a class of 35 students, I have 30 guaranteed, because they save time and they can get to the lecture from their bedroom without having to travel the distance and without having to show their face, because it's not made up, not dressed up, etc., etc. The other thing actually is some students, they always stay behind when students are starting to leave the lecture at the end. A couple of students would stay behind and then say to me, can I speak to you after the lecture, because I couldn't speak in front of everyone. So again, this opens opportunities for shy students. I think I will end it here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zaheer. There are so many things to be talked about. The world moving closer together, accessibility of materials to other scholars, to other students, and more opportunities here. And also saving the environment. I read in a paper the other day that Zoom meetings that do save the environment. If you save 5Ks, if you do 5 kilometers, if your commute is only 5 kilometers, you already save a lot of fossil fuels in comparison to a face-to-face meeting. So thanks very much, and thank you very much for giving your thoughts. I would now like to open the floor to the audience, because we have a couple of questions, and there's one question that goes to everybody. Has the pandemic promoted the depoliticization of academia on a global scale, do you think? Has the pandemic promoted the depoliticization of academia on a global scale? Is there anybody who would like to come forward to answer this question?
As we have 3 questions, Karen, maybe one person can take each question, whoever fancies this one.
Yeah. Zaheer, you were fastest.
Yes, I have to say, thank you. I have to say that I became more politically aware because I am at home, because I am not going anywhere. I have allowed myself to attend a lot of lectures from all over the world, actually, on issues that affect many people on the global scales. So I have really made the most of that, and the generalization of knowledge, the way it has been done through Zoom, has really benefited many people, not just myself, but many people have become aware or have had the time to go to lectures on some hot issues, on what's happening in my region, for example, of specialization, the Middle East and North Africa. I have been following at least once a week a lecture on the developments. But what this situation and lockdown has made me aware of is global inequalities. And this really is heartbreaking, because oftentimes we take many things for granted, especially when you are in a privileged environment. And one day I was in a lecture, and a colleague was struggling to give his paper from abroad because his internet was failing all the time. So his image was freezing. He had to go and use his smartphone in the end and talk without, of course, we couldn't see him. He was giving his lecture over the phone. That must have also cost him a fortune, because if you are using so many units to give a lecture on the phone. So it did make me aware of so many global inequalities. On the women and gender front, it also exposed a lot of inequalities, not only in the developing world, but also in the developed world. Statistics have shown that in the UK, for example, women have been shouldering 70% of the house tutoring. Okay, another thing on the women and gender front, the escalation of gender-based violence and femicide across the globe, and so we have become aware that these conditions we live in have really made a few bad things escalate, and it exposed gender inequality in the UK and everywhere. I think I will be brief here.
Thank you so much. I totally agree with you. Women have been have been bearing the brunt of the pandemic in terms of triple workloads, excessive workloads at home, excessive workloads at uni, and excessive workloads with homeschooling. Yes, exactly. I can't agree more. I would like to ask another question that comes from the audience. How did you cater for required practical sessions? For example, those who should teach a class, or so practical field activities in the engineering field. How could this be evaluated for the final semester? How did you do it, and how did you evaluate it? Is there anybody who would like to come forward on this one? I could maybe give an example if nobody wants to come forward here or can come forward. I can maybe give an example from my uni that comes to mind right now, because we are also trained teachers for domestic science, and of course these people, and also future art teachers, and they had to go completely online. From March 2020, my university has been totally online, except for some now, for some in this winter term, for some lab activities, that kind of thing. But at the time, in the summer term, starting in April, everything was online. So the domestic science people had to do the cooking sessions online, and they were very, very creative about this. And my colleague, even from the art department, they did everything online. So they cooked together online, basically. So everybody was, I don't know how they did it, but they did it together. And my colleague from the art department actually used Zoom sessions and delivered his art lectures. For example, everybody had to, I think the topic was green, and he incorporated it in such a way that it was still practical. Everybody did their practical bit, and then everybody shared online. So this was something that happened, and he actually got a prize for this. He was awarded a prize, a teaching prize for this, because he did it so well that the students nominated him. I would like to ask another question that goes to Mashrur. When the pandemic is over, what might change about how we go about institutional education? In retrospect, how might COVID be a game changer for good? That's your question.
Okay, yes, a game changer, yes, I think so. For example, our renewed exposure to sharing of information and attending webinars digitally and thus across geographical borders will necessarily change the future of academia. Added to this, I learned and innovated new ways of reaching and engaging students. This I will surely continue with customization. But I'm also apprehensive whether our teachers and students will become addicted to online class. For example, a young niece of mine said, online class is good because I don't have to wake up early and I don't have to go to school. Or who knows, some teachers in Bangladesh may find giving online classes more convenient and giving online on-site classes, and they may go replacing on-site classes with online classes. Whatever, let's encounter the changes and as they come, and if we want, let's make newer changes. If not for good, using the pun for good, if not for good, at least for betterment. So surely it's going to be a game changer.
Thank you. And this is maybe also something that we can take on that remains from the pandemic, because we don't have, unfortunately, more time. There are two more questions, but we don't have more time to answer these. But this is one thing that might remain. We could talk a lot more about this topic. And I must say, dear panelists, that this experience that you have shared with us has been inspirational on many levels, and we could talk a lot more. Thank you ever so much for these fascinating insights into your academic lives that they have given us from all over the world. And we've seen that the pandemic and creativity don't exclude themselves or each other, and that difficult times might even function as a catalyst for creativity. There's no end to resourceful and imaginative ways of dealing with it. And thank you again for ending on this positive note, for being part of the discussion, for your attendance and attention at this MacFest event. And now I would like to hand over to Kesra for last words.
What can I say? It's been an amazing session, absolutely. So interesting, so stimulating, an in-depth discussion by all of you. And I've learned so much, as I'm sure the fellow colleagues and have learned from each other, as well as the attendees. And want to thank for sharing your personal experiences, your knowledge, and then providing the context to where you come from. And you did that in depth. Really loved it, particularly during the time of the pandemic. And of course, you also share the good practice that we can all learn from. Thank you to Karen for holding the whole thing together, for all the planning, and for terrific hosting, and for adding your bits as I had wanted, really. And thank you to all the attendees, particularly to these wonderful attendees who have attended us from Bangladesh, from Pakistan, from New York, from Malaysia, you name it, they are all there. And they've been keeping us busy with their chats, with their points. So would like to engage them further. If you want to get in touch with us, you have our email, you can connect with us. And if you have any personal question to any of these colleagues, please do send that to us. I want to thank our MacFest team for being with us on a Sunday, for giving two or three of their hours, working behind the scene. And also a reminder to everybody about our event. Next Sunday, we have another international panel, particularly, this is one of them, Islamic calligraphy, that's on Tuesday. But why I mentioned the international panel is we have a lady called Adele Jones. She's going to be the host next week. And she's actually hosting a filmmaker from Singapore, Lubna from America, Zahra from Turkey, and one or two others. So please do join them. As well as that, we've got many other events. So fabulous event. I'm really delighted. It was hard work, communicating, all the rest of it, as you know, but it was well worth it. And I'm so glad Kate joined us. She learned a lot from you people. And thank you finally, and have a wonderful day wherever you're sitting. And thank you for giving us your Sunday. So goodbye and assalamu alaikum.